I never thought I'd see my family's true colors under the bright lights of an airport terminal. My billionaire grandpa had just spent $500,000 on a dream vacation to Dubai. Luxury suites, desert safaris, dinners on rooftops overlooking the skyline. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. But as we rolled our luggage toward the check-in counter, my dad suddenly turned to Grandpa, his voice cold and sharp. "No ticket. Go home." Time froze. The man who built our family's fortune stood stunned, betrayed by his own son. My mother looked away. My siblings followed my father without a word. Everyone walked on, except me. My heart pounded, torn between loyalty and fear, but in that moment I knew I couldn't abandon him. So I grabbed Grandpa's hand and stayed. That decision would change everything. The air inside the terminal was buzzing with voices, the click of luggage wheels, the occasional laughter of families heading for adventure. For me, it all turned hollow. My dad's words, "No ticket, go home," hung in the air like a knife blade. Grandpa's face drained of color. This was the man who had once closed billion-dollar deals without flinching, who built skyscrapers with his name etched in steel. Now he stood, silent, his boarding pass absent, his dignity stripped away by his own son. "Dad," I whispered, clutching the strap of my bag. "What do you mean? Grandpa paid for everything." My father's eyes flicked to me, cold and impatient. "Emily, this doesn't concern you. We'll handle it." He adjusted his jacket, gesturing for my mom and siblings to keep moving toward security. Grandpa finally spoke, his voice trembling. You excluded me? From my own trip? Don't make a scene," my dad hissed, lowering his voice but sharp enough to cut. "You're old. You'd just slow us down. We've planned this for weeks. You'll be fine at home." I couldn't breathe. How could they? How could he? I looked at my mom, silently begging for her to say something. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My younger brother tugged on his backpack straps, glancing nervously at Dad, then quickly followed him toward the gate. My sister pretended to check her phone, as if none of this was happening. Tears blurred my vision. "He's your father," I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to make heads turn. "You can't just leave him here like trash." A few passengers slowed down, curious. Dad shot me a glare that could have turned stone to dust. "Enough, Emily. Don't embarrass this family." But wasn't that what they were doing? Abandoning the very man who had made all of this possible? Grandpa's hand trembled as he reached for his suitcase handle. "It's all right," he murmured, almost to himself. "I've been left behind before. I'll survive." That broke me. "No," I said, louder this time. My heart pounded as I stepped to his side, sliding my hand into his. "You won't be alone. Not this time." Dad froze mid-step, shocked. "Emily, what are you doing? Get over here, now." "I'm staying with Grandpa," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If you want to abandon him, that's on you. But I won't." The silence that followed was deafening. My siblings stared like I'd grown another head. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. "And Grandpa?" He squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening. For the first time in years, I felt his strength flow through me, not as a billionaire or a tycoon, but as a grandfather who had just been chosen over betrayal. Behind us, the announcement blared. Final boarding call for Emirates Flight 209 to Dubai. My family disappeared through the gate, and just like that, the line had been drawn. The sliding doors of the terminal opened, and a gust of evening air rushed against us. Outside, the taxi line stretched along the curb, drivers shouting destinations, engines idling. Families climbed in with their children, their laughter echoing what we had just lost. Grandpa and I stood there with our suitcases, alone. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched under the weight of betrayal. My chest ached. This wasn't just a missed flight, this was rejection, deliberate and cruel. "Emily," he said softly, his voice raw. "You didn't have to stay. You could have gone with them. You deserve the vacation too." I shook my head, clutching his arm. "What's a vacation worth if it means leaving you behind? They're the ones who don't deserve it, Grandpa." He gave me a weak smile, the kind that tried to hide years of loneliness. "You remind me of your grandmother," he whispered. She never walked away, no matter how hard it got. My throat tightened. Then maybe I inherited the right part of the family. We loaded our bags into a taxi. As we pulled away from the airport, I caught one last glimpse of the glowing Emirates sign, taunting us with what we'd lost. The ride was quiet. Grandpa stared out the window, the city lights reflecting in his tired eyes. I wanted to reach for his hand, to say something, but the words tangled in my chest. How do you comfort a man who has just been discarded by his own son? Finally, he spoke. $500,000, Emily. That's what I spent for them. Suites at the Burj Al Arab, desert safaris, yachts. Every detail planned so my family could make memories together. And now, he trailed off, shaking his head. Now I'm nothing but baggage to them. Not to me, I said quickly, turning toward him. Never to me. He blinked, as if testing whether I meant it. You'd really give all that up, Dubai? The luxury? The adventure, just to sit here with me? Yes, I said without hesitation. Because I know what matters. It isn't the vacation. It isn't the money. It's you, Grandpa. Silence filled the cab. The driver glanced at us in the rearview mirror but wisely kept quiet. Grandpa's hand trembled as it covered mine. You don't know what that means to me, Emily. I thought I'd lost everyone. You haven't lost me, I whispered. We reached his house, a grand estate perched on the hills, its windows glowing warmly against the night. I had been there countless times as a child, but stepping inside now felt different. The walls didn't echo with the laughter of family, they echoed with abandonment. Grandpa sank into his leather chair, running a hand over his face. I sat across from him, still holding his gaze. We'll make our own trip, I said suddenly. Maybe not Dubai, but somewhere. Just you and me. He chuckled, a sound cracked with grief but alive with hope. Maybe, he said, maybe it's time I put my trust where it belongs. And in that moment, sitting in the quiet glow of his study, I realized that what my father had thrown away, I had just begun to gain. Not just an inheritance, but a bond no betrayal could break. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of Grandpa's study. I woke up curled on the leather couch, still in yesterday's clothes, the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. Grandpa sat at his desk, glasses perched on his nose, papers spread across the polished wood. He didn't notice me at first. His hand trembled as he flipped through invoices, receipts, and travel documents. His face darkened with every page. Grandpa? I asked quietly. He looked up, exhaustion etched into his eyes. Emily, come here. He tapped a stack of papers with a finger. Do you see this? I leaned closer. The documents were hotel confirmations, Burj Al Arab, 2 ocean view suites, 10 nights. My stomach clenched when I read the names listed. Richard Willis, Claire Willis, Jacob Willis, Megan Willis, my dad, my mom, my brother, my sister, no mention of Emily, and worse, no mention of Grandpa. They booked it 6 weeks ago, Grandpa muttered, his voice breaking. 6 weeks. They never planned for either of us to be there. I gasped. So, it wasn't just you. They wanted me gone too. His jaw tightened. Yes, they used my money to buy their luxury, but they cut both of us out. And your father, he was the one who handled every booking. Anger boiled in my chest, sharp and hot. I remembered Dad's dismissive tone at the airport, the way Mom avoided my eyes, the false excitement at family dinners when they promised all of us would see Dubai together. It had all been a performance. Grandpa leaned back, eyes glistening but fierce. Do you understand what this means, Emily? This wasn't a mistake. This was betrayal, deliberate and calculated. I swallowed hard, fists curling at my sides. They wanted to erase us. You, the man who built this family, and me, because I stood by you. Grandpa reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. Then maybe that's what brought us together, their betrayal and our loyalty. I met his gaze, my voice steady. We won't let them get away with this. He gave a slow nod. No, not this time. The truth hung between us, heavy, but uniting. For the first time, I saw not just my grandfather, but an ally. And I knew our fight was only beginning. By afternoon, the quiet house felt like a storm was brewing. Grandpa sat in his chair, tapping the edge of his phone against the armrest. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with something new resolve. "They think they can humiliate me and get away with it," he said. "They think money makes me powerless, but they forgot whose money it is." I leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Grandpa's lips curved into the faintest smile. He picked up the landline phone, the heavy black one he always insisted on keeping, and dialed a number from memory. The line clicked, followed by a cheerful voice. "Good afternoon, Burj Al Arab Reservations. How may I help you?" Grandpa's tone shifted instantly calm, commanding. "Yes, this is Richard Willis. I need to cancel a reservation for 2 suites, 10 nights, checking in tomorrow." The agent hesitated. "Sir, this is quite a substantial booking. Are you certain? There will be penalties." "Cancel it," Grandpa interrupted, steel in his voice. "Immediately. Effective now." I held my breath, watching as he gave the confirmation details. With each keystroke the agent typed, I imagined the walls of luxury my family thought they'd enjoy crumbling away. Finally the agent said, "It's done, sir. You'll receive cancellation confirmation by email. The penalty fee is $32,000. Grandpa chuckled darkly. $32,000 is a small price to watch them squirm. When he hung up, silence filled the room. I felt my heart race, equal parts terrified and thrilled. "Grandpa," I whispered, "when they arrive tomorrow, they'll have nowhere to stay." He nodded, satisfaction flickering across his face. "Exactly. They left us stranded at an airport. Let's see how they enjoy being stranded in Dubai." I couldn't help it, I laughed. For the first time since yesterday, it felt like we had taken something back, like we weren't just victims anymore. Grandpa leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. "Emily, sometimes the best way to fight betrayal is not with anger, but with consequences. They made their choice. Now they'll live with it." That night, as I lay awake in the guest bedroom, I imagined my family stepping up to the golden reception desk of the world's most luxurious hotel, only to be told, "Your reservation was cancelled." I smiled into the darkness. Revenge had already begun. The next morning, the ringing started before sunrise. Grandpa's phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand, the screen flashing with familiar numbers. By noon, the call log showed more than 50 missed calls, 56, to be exact. I sat across from him at the breakfast table, nursing a cup of coffee. "They've finally realized it," I said. "The hotel." Grandpa lifted the phone, his expression unreadable. The device buzzed again. "Richard Willis Jr., my father." "Answer it," I urged. Grandpa shook his head. "Not yet. Let them sweat." Another call came, this time from Mom's number. Then my brother, then my sister. Each one rolled to voicemail. I couldn't resist pressing play on one. "Dad?" My father's voice exploded through the speaker. "What the hell did you do? They said the reservation was cancelled. We're stuck in the lobby with our luggage. Fix this. Call me back right now." I glanced at Grandpa. His lips tightened, but he said nothing. The next voicemail was softer, my mother's voice, trembling. "Please, Dad, the children are crying. We can't find another hotel. Everything is booked for the convention. Just, please call us back." My stomach twisted. For a moment, guilt pricked me. The kids didn't deserve this. But then I remembered the look on Grandpa's face at the airport, the way Dad had brushed him off like garbage. The guilt hardened into resolve. Finally, Grandpa's phone rang again, and this time he answered. "Yes?" His voice was calm, almost casual. "Dad, thank God. What's wrong with you? You canceled everything?" My father's voice was frantic, desperate. I could hear chaos in the background, voices raised, a child sobbing. Grandpa didn't flinch. "I canceled what was mine. What you stole from me." "This is insane!" Dad snapped. "We have nowhere to go." I leaned closer, whispering, "Put it on speaker." Grandpa did. "Emily?" My father's tone shifted, sharp with anger. "Are you there too? Did you help him with this?" I took a deep breath. "Yes. Because I wasn't the one who betrayed him. You were." There was a pause, then a hissed threat. "You'll regret this. Both of you." Grandpa's eyes narrowed. "No, son. The only one regretting anything here is you. Actions have consequences." The line went dead. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Then Grandpa let out a slow breath, almost a laugh. You hear that, Emily? He's cornered. For the first time in his life, he knows he's not in control. I felt a rush of adrenaline. The betrayal had cut deep, but now the tables were turning. My father was thousands of miles away, powerless. And I was here, standing beside the man he had tried to erase. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice. That night, the house was quiet, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I sat in the living room, staring at the shadows stretching across the walls. Grandpa was asleep in his chair, his chest rising and falling steadily, the phone finally silent after hours of unanswered calls. I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with memories, some so vivid they felt like yesterday. I remembered being 8 years old, hiding under the dining room table while my parents argued upstairs. The thunder of their voices rattled the ceiling, and I cried quietly into my knees. Then I felt a hand gentle, warm reach for me. Grandpa. He had crouched down, his eyes kind, and whispered, "Come on, Emily. Let's get some ice cream." We'd driven to the all-night diner, just the two of us. I licked chocolate fudge sundaes while he told me stories about his early days in business, how he'd lost everything twice before he built his empire. "People will always try to take from you," he'd said, spoon-tapping the edge of the glass dish. "But you can't let them take your spirit. That's yours to protect." That lesson had lived inside me ever since, buried under years of trying to please parents who never saw me the way he did. And now, seeing him treated like nothing, cast aside by the very family who owed him everything, I realized it was time to protect more than just my spirit. It was time to protect his. I glanced at him in the chair, his head tilted back, gray hair glowing in the lamplight. His face looked so peaceful in sleep, but I knew the storm he carried inside. "I won't let them break you," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "Not again, not while I'm here." A determination settled deep in my chest, stronger than the anger, stronger than the guilt. For once, I wasn't the overlooked daughter, the silent bystander. I was his ally, his shield. Tomorrow, when the phone rang again, when the accusations came sharper, when the threats grew louder, I would be ready. Because loyalty wasn't just about staying, it was about fighting. 2 weeks later, the day finally came. My family's flight from Dubai had landed that morning. By afternoon, they were already blowing up Grandpa's phone with messages demanding a family meeting. Against every instinct screaming to ignore them, Grandpa agreed. "Why?" I asked, pacing in his study. "They'll only try to manipulate you again." He steepled his fingers, his expression calm, calculating. "Exactly. Let them try. This time, I want them to see just how wrong they were." The living room was staged like a battlefield. Grandpa sat in his high-backed leather chair at the head of the room. I stood beside him, my hand resting on the armrest, my stance unshakable. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting shadows that made the space feel less like a home and more like a courtroom. The doorbell rang. When Dad, Mom, Jacob, and Megan walked in, their faces told the story before they said a word. Exhaustion clung to them. Sunburns from Dubai's relentless heat stood in stark contrast to the cold fury in their eyes. "Dad," my father barked, not even sitting down. "What you pulled was unforgivable." Grandpa didn't flinch. "Unforgivable?" His voice was quiet but sharp. "You left me at an airport like unwanted luggage. You erased me from my own vacation. And now I'm unforgivable?" Mom stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Please, let's not do this in front of Emily." "In front of Emily?" I cut her off, my voice rising. "Do you think I don't already know what you did? I was there. I watched you walk away from him like he was nothing." Jacob shifted uncomfortably, muttering. "It wasn't like that." "Yes, it was," I snapped. "You all knew. You planned it 6 weeks in advance. You thought he'd just accept it, go home quietly, and never fight back." Dad's face reddened. "You've been poisoning him against us, haven't you? That's why you stayed." "I stayed," I said, stepping closer. "Because I saw the truth. I saw who he really is, and who you really are." Grandpa leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Richard, I spent $500,000 to give this family something unforgettable. And unforgettable, it was just not in the way you hoped." Dad's jaw clenched. You think cutting us off will solve anything? You can't run this family without me. Grandpa reached for a leather folder beside his chair. Slowly, deliberately, he opened it and pulled out a set of papers. That's where you're wrong. This, he held up the first page, the notary seal gleaming under the lamplight, is my revised will. Signed, witnessed, and ironclad. Mom gasped. Jacob froze. Megan's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's voice dropped, low and dangerous. What did you do? I corrected my mistake, Grandpa said. His voice carried the weight of finality. Everything I own, my businesses, my properties, my fortune goes to Emily. The only one who stood by me when the rest of you turned your backs. The silence shattered into chaos. Mom cried out, "You can't do this. She's just a child compared to us." "I'm 18, I shot back, my voice trembling but fierce. Old enough to know loyalty when I see it. Old enough to know betrayal. Jacob stepped forward, his face twisted with desperation. "You can't punish all of us for Dad's mistake." "Punish!" Grandpa roared, his voice shaking the room. "This isn't punishment. This is justice. You chose greed over family. Emily chose loyalty. Actions have consequences." Dad's mask finally cracked. "You'll regret this," he hissed at Grandpa, then turned to me. "And you, Emily, you think this makes you powerful? You're nothing without us." "How?" I squared my shoulders, heart pounding. "No, I'm nothing without him." I placed my hand firmly on Grandpa's shoulder. "But, with him, I have everything I need." The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney. The weight of the moment pressed down on all of us. For once, my father had no comeback. Grandpa leaned back, exhausted but triumphant. "Get out," he said coldly. "All of you, and don't come back." They hesitated, as if waiting for him to change his mind. But when they saw he wouldn't, they left my father's glare promising a storm, my mother sobbing quietly, my siblings too stunned to speak. The door shut behind them with a final click. The house was quiet again, save for the faint crackle of the fire. Grandpa exhaled, his shoulders sinking. "Emily," he murmured, his voice breaking for the first time that day. "You saved me." Tears blurred my eyes, but I smiled. "No, Grandpa, you saved me too." And in that silence, in that victory, I knew. The real inheritance wasn't money or property. It was the bond we had chosen together. The silence after the door shut was almost deafening. The echo of their voices, their accusations, still rang in my ears. But for the first time, the house felt safe. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, his hand gripping mine tightly. The folder containing his new will rested on the table like a shield forged from truth. His voice was low, raspy, but unshakable. "They'll fight me, Emily. They'll drag this into court, smear my name in papers, do anything to claw back what they think is theirs." I squeezed his hand. "Let them try. They already lost the only thing that mattered, their place in this family." Arlie. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the crackling fire, the only witness. Then Grandpa smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since the betrayal. "You remind me of myself when I was young. Fierce. Unwilling to bend. I learned from you," I whispered. The next few weeks passed, like a whirlwind. Lawyers were contacted, documents notarized, accounts secured. True to Grandpa's prediction, my father tried everything: angry calls, legal threats, even dragging my mother and siblings into his campaign. But the law was airtight. Every time his voice rose in fury, Grandpa's response was steady, simple. Actions have consequences. At night, when the world quieted down, it was just the two of us again. We cooked simple meals together: eggs, toast, sometimes pasta, when I convinced him to let me experiment. He told me stories I'd never heard before, of his first job sweeping factory floors, of the nights he went hungry while building his empire, of the people who betrayed him along the way. "Betrayal never comes from strangers," he said one evening, sipping his tea. "It always comes from the ones you trust. But loyalty? That's rarer than diamonds." He looked at me then, and I knew what he meant. One morning, Grandpa surprised me with 2 suitcases by the door. "What's this?" I asked, blinking. "Our trip," he said, his grin mischievous. "We may have missed Dubai, but there are other places to see. Just you and me." Tears welled up instantly. You mean it? I've never meant anything more. We flew to Greece that week. Santorini's whitewashed houses shimmered under the sun, the sea stretched endlessly, and as we stood on the cliffs watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, I realized something. This was worth more than any luxury hotel. Not because of the destination, but because of who stood beside me. Back home, the storm with my father continued, but it no longer mattered. The new will had been filed, the estate locked in legal fortresses no challenge could break. The tabloids eventually caught the story, spinning tales of family betrayal and the granddaughter who chose loyalty. People whispered, speculated, judged. But in our home, life grew quiet, steady, real. I spent afternoons studying in Grandpa's library while he handled business calls. Evenings were filled with laughter, something I thought I'd never hear from him again. One night, as the clock struck midnight, he looked at me with that same steady gaze I'd grown up with. Emily, you know what you've inherited isn't just money, don't you? I nodded. It's trust. And responsibility. He smiled. Exactly. You'll carry this family forward, not the ones who betrayed me, but the one who stayed. Months later, when my father tried one last time storming up to the house with angry words and desperate pleas, I met him at the door. You made your choice at the airport, I told him calmly. You left us both behind. Now you live with it. He stared at me, furious, but powerless. For once, he had no control, and I shut the door, ending that chapter forever. Life didn't magically turn perfect after that. Challenges came, whispers of lawsuits lingered, and some nights Grandpa still stared out the window, remembering the sting of betrayal. But every time, I was there. We were there together. And together, we built something stronger than money or inheritance. Trust, love, and a bond forged in fire. As I walked into his study one evening, finding him asleep in his chair with the fireplace casting golden light across his face, I thought back to that day at the airport. The moment I had to choose, I had chosen him, and in every way that mattered, he had chosen me back.